Felix Gonzalez-Torres was born in Guaymaro, Cuba in 1957. He began his studies in art at the University of Puerto Rico and continued in New York at the Whitney in 1981 and in 1983. He received a BFA from the Pratt Institute in 1983 and the MFA from the International Center of Photography and from NYU in 1987. His life was made short when he passed away from complications due to AIDS in 1996. Another important date that will be relevant to his works is the year that his partner Ross died, also from complications of AIDS, which was in 1991. The image on the screen here is one of few images that I could find of Felix Gonzalez-Torres, who is on the left, and his partner Ross, who's on the right. Upon his graduation in 1987, Felix Gonzalez-Torres became part of the artist collective called Group Material, whose practice focused on involving the community, political activism, and they also frequently invoked advertising spaces in their works and exhibitions. All three of these themes will reappear in Gonzalez-Torres' future solo works. One of his earliest solo exhibitions would be the first of many more billboards to come. It was entitled Untitled, as were most of his pieces, and the piece was installed in 1989 in New York's Sheridan Square on the 20th anniversary of the Stonewall Rebellion. The piece deals with several events that were important in the LGBTQ history. The exhibition was received by the 100,000 to 200,000 participants who passed by it in the Gay and Lesbian Liberation Day March in 1989. Essential to its nature is the fact that it exists in the public realm and that there is no specific label that signifies that the billboard is a piece of art. This speaks to his belief in the right for individual viewers to experience the art on their own terms and to understand it based on their experiences and their willingness to engage with the work. It's also significant because while it is in such a monumental location, such a public space, it is also showing the history of a group that he calls, quote, historically invisible, close quote. Frequent themes in Gonzalez-Torres' work are formation and decay. His stacks, which are pictured here, are stacks of papers, often printed with text or photos. Visitors are invited to take a piece of paper, which obviously causes the stacks to slowly diminish as the pieces of paper are taken. These works are meant to challenge viewers by inviting them to break one of the most universal rules of art, which is don't touch the art. He's also challenging the idea of art being precious by using common materials such as copy paper. When these exhibitions would travel, the gallery hosting the event would go and get the copy paper, make their own literal copies of the work. So the papers themselves weren't significant. They could literally be bought at the supply store around the corner. It's the idea and it's the significance of the exhibition that was important. Some more information about how this came to be was that when the idea was being developed, everybody was fighting for wall space, according to Gonzalez-Torres. So he wanted to look at floor space, gallery floor space, to engage with that part of the gallery. He was also interested in making and being able to give back to the audience that was coming to see his work. So with these stacks, the audience member can literally walk away with a piece of art. You have a souvenir as you leave the gallery, as you leave the show. So he wanted this to be a way to also give back to the audience. He also uses similar themes in the works that are candy piles. So he's known for several variations of these works. The idea came as a metaphor for his experience with his partner Ross, who was dying of AIDS. So the only stipulations for this exhibition is that the candies should start out in a pile of 175 pounds. This weight is significant because it was the weight of Ross when he was at a healthy weight. Visitors are invited to take a piece of candy in the same way they're invited to take a piece of paper in his stacks. And the result, again, is a pile that is slowly decaying. Gonzalez-Torres is quoted as saying, "I wanted to make an artwork that could disappear, that never existed, and it was a metaphor for when Ross was dying." But the interesting thing is that as soon as these candy piles are depleted, they are then automatically refilled by the gallery. So they are both decaying and refilling constantly. Another interesting idea, but with both the stacks and these piles, is that although the pieces do decay, they are theoretically indestructible because they can be duplicated so easily, because the candies don't have to be specific, because the papers don't have to be specific. You could put your own installation in your in your living room, theoretically. Another interesting thing I think about the candies in contrast with the stacks are that candy, once it's eaten, is gone completely, whereas the stacks, you have the remnant of the paper, theoretically, although I suppose you could dispose of it in some way as well. I have one more quote from Gonzalez-Torres that I'd like to share as he discusses the relationship between public and private and other relationships that are so essential in the candy piles. Quote, between public and private, between personal and social, between the fear of loss and the joy of loving, of growing, of changing, of always becoming more, of losing oneself slowly and then being replenished all over again from scratch. I need the viewer, I need the public interaction. Without a public whose works are nothing, nothing. I need the public to complete the work. Close quote. Before I launch into this work, I want to share another quote. Meaning is created once something can be related to personal experience. So I want to give you a little piece of Gonzalez-Torres' personal experience that helps make a connection between the title of this piece and the potential meaning for the piece. So the title is, of course, untitled, but in parentheses, Rossmore. So Rossmore was the name of the street where Ross and Felix lived for a time, and it was the first and only time they lived together before Ross died in 1991. So knowing that information in the title, this work takes on a whole new meaning, and it helps us understand the kind of sentimentality that might be related to the light bulbs and what they might mean. I want to end with one more quote from Gonzalez-Torres. I think the one in the slide previous was important in helping us look at all art, not just his works, and that applies as well. I think with this quote, it's Gonzalez-Torres' idea of what art should do and its role in other people's lives and how it should affect us. Quote, art leaves a mark. It leaves a statement that you were here, that perhaps it is possible to have a different view of life. Close quote.